Helen Maguire.
Madam Chair, I'm greatly concerned about the consequences of this bill. Consequences for businesses, for employees and for essential primary care providers in my constituency of Epsom Newell and across the country. This bill represents an unfair jobs tax that risks harming the livelihoods of countless individuals and the viability of small businesses at a time when they're already grappling with a multitude of challenges. I want to begin by highlighting the impact of this legislation will have on community pharmacies, which are at the front line of healthcare in our local areas. The owner of Horton Pharmacy in Epsom has expressed grave concerns about the financial burden this increase in employer national insurance contributions will impose. He told me, and I quote, "We're estimating it's going to cost an extra £12,000 a year. It's very distressing and making it harder to keep our doors open and help reduce the burden on other parts of the NHS." Community pharmacies like Horton Pharmacy play a critical role in alleviating pressure on our overstretched NHS by providing accessible healthcare and advice. Yet this bill threatens their financial viability, which in turn risks leaving constituents without the local care they rely on, increasing the burden on the NHS. I will give way.
Is she aware that the NPA, the National Pharmacies Association, have actually agreed for collective action for the first time in their history, directly as a result of the budget that's been proposed in this Parliament? Does she have any comment on that?
Yes, I am aware of this, and I agree that it's a good way forward. But in addition to this, another business in my constituency, the Family Building Society, is also facing substantial repercussions. I met with the CEO, Mark Bogard, last Friday, who shared that this national insurance increase will cost them approximately $300,000 every year. He said, even as a mutual building society with no shareholders to generate returns, for we cannot simply swallow that cost. So going forward, inevitably, they will now employ 5 or 6 fewer people. Madam Chair, these are real-world examples of the damaging, rippling effects of this bill. It won't just hit businesses, it will hit employees too. Fewer jobs, lower wages and missed opportunities. This government claims they want to kick-start economic growth. But how can businesses grow when they're forced to cut jobs instead of investing in their business? How can the economy thrive when ambition is replaced with survival? This bill does not kickstart economic growth, it slams on the brakes across the board. This bill threatens sectors vital to our economy and society. Social care providers, GPs and hospices are already at breaking point, and they will now face further financial strain. Most of these organisations do not qualify for the employment allowance, meaning they are particularly exposed to these increases. The Liberal Democrats have called on the government to exempt these essential providers from the tax rise, but those calls have been ignored. This decision will worsen the crisis in our NHS and social care system, pushing more providers to the brink of bankruptcy. 6 in 10 care homes in the UK are operated by companies vulnerable to even mild economic shocks. How then can the government justify imposing additional financial burdens on a sector already struggling to stay afloat? Let's be clear, the government's own analysis admits that nearly 4 times as many employers will lose out under this bill compared to those who will benefit. For many employers, this will translate into an average annual tax increase of over $26,000. This is not just a jobs tax, it's a growth tax, a productivity tax and ultimately a tax on people's living standards. This is a deeply inefficient way to raise funds, especially when fairer alternatives exist. The Liberal Democrats have proposed several measures that would raise revenue without harming jobs and growth. These include reversing Conservative tax cuts for big banks, increasing the digital services tax and introducing a fairer form of capital gains tax to ensure that ultra-wealthy pay their fair share. These measures would protect small businesses, support families and safeguard essential services while still addressing the country's fiscal challenges. Madam Chair, the people of Epsom and Newell deserve better. They deserve a government that supports, not stifles, innovation, enterprise and community spirit. They deserve a government that listens to small businesses, healthcare providers and families who are already struggling under the weight of rising costs and stagnant wages. This bill is not the solution to our economic challenges. It's a blunt instrument that will do more harm than good, jeopardising jobs, living standards and essential services. I urge the government to reconsider this unfair and counterproductive measure and to work with us to develop a fairer and more sustainable approach to taxation that prioritises people and communities.